Hey everybody, it's Richie 3Jack here with a week in review for January 6, 2013. I finished up Pro Golf Synopsis this week. The ebook is available in PDF format. It costs $10 and it's up on the blog at 3jack.blogspot.com. If you go to the upper right hand corner of the blog, you will see where you can add Pro Golf Synopsis to your cart. The book is so far has gotten really great reviews about it. I appreciate everybody's support on it, and I've gotten a few questions so far. And if people continue to have questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. I would like to get to one question I've gotten this week that I thought was a very good question. The question was with regards to what a golfer should bag as far as equipment, what their bag setup should look like. Like my bag setup, I have a driver, a 3-wood, an 18-degree hybrid, then a 21-degree 3-iron, and a 24-degree 4-iron. I also have, it goes through all to the wedges. I also have a gap wedge, which is 52 degrees. My general rule of thumb is if I don't need the 3-iron on an approach shot, then I will bag the 52-degree gap wedge. If I do need the 3-iron on an approach shot, even if it's only one shot, even if there's a decent chance I will use it, but maybe a slight chance I don't need it, I will always bag the 3-iron. And I'll get to all that in a bit. Now, the short answer is that I would lean more towards bagging the extra hybrid / long iron versus carrying 4 wedges in the bag. And the reason why, just from a numbers perspective, is when you look at the metrics, and I've done all the research and everything I've seen as far as golf goes, the general rule of thumb is what I call the standard deviation, quote unquote, rules the roost when it comes to golf. When the standard deviation on a particular shot is higher, that shot becomes more important. Now, to explain standard deviation, it's the amount of dispersion of data from the mean. Okay, so I'll go a little bit and try to put that in layman's terms for you. Let's say we do a poll of people and we ask them how much money they have in their wallet, and we'll poll 100 people and we'll get an average of $50. If the standard deviation is huge, if it's big, that means there were a lot of people that had a greater number from the mean. So what I mean by that is we may poll one person and they'll say they had $0 in their wallet. Then we poll another person, they'll say they have $500 in their wallet. Poll another person, they'll say, well, I got $55 in my wallet. Another person, I got about $275 in my wallet. And then another person, well, I got about $25 in my wallet. The average will be $50, we'll say. But people, as far as their dispersion and differences and variance, and some people call it volatility in financial terms, will be very high. Now, if we poll a different set of people and we ask them how much money they have in their wallet, and they've got the average comes out to $50 per person, but the standard deviation is low, that means the dispersion is much smaller. So we'll poll one person and he'll say, well, I have $45 in my wallet. Next person, $55 in my wallet. Next person, oh, I got $60. Next person, I got $40, and so on and so forth. So in golf, when the performance on a shot has a higher standard deviation, the more important that shot generally becomes. So if I've got a 90-yard shot into the green versus a 190-yard shot in the green, the performance, which is the proximity to the cup, will be much greater for the 190-yard shot than it will be for the 90-yard shot. No, regardless if you have the right club in your hand or not. I mean, generally speaking, if you've got, we're not saying hit a 3-iron from a 90-yard shot and you won't have a large standard deviation. We're talking about if you're one club off or so, standard deviation for a 90-yard shot will be much smaller than a standard deviation for a 190-yard shot. So thus, the 190-yard shot becomes more important. Where there are some caveats to that is, first of all, we talked about in Pro Golf Synopsis, is with what we call frequency, the amount of times you're going to hit that shot. The standard deviation for shots from 225 to 275 yards on tour is greater than it is from the danger zone. But shots from 225 to 275 yards on tour have very little impact on a pro golfer's performance and success on tour. The reason why is because they don't hit many of those shots per round on tour. They hit roughly 4 to 5 danger zone shots around on tour, but they may hit maybe one shot from 225 to 275 yards on tour. So, there are some people that I know there's 12 handicappers out there that can legitimately hit it about 300 yards and off the tee, and they'll play 6,000 to 6,200 yard courses. So they really don't need their hybrid that much. If they use it, it's usually because they hit such a terrible drive, and then they're probably using it incorrectly. They probably are in a bad spot in the rough, and they should really just try to get hit a wedge and just try to get down the fairway. Instead, they're trying to hit the career shot out of the rough with a hybrid. But in general, the frequency should be enough for a situation where you're going to hit enough long approach shots where you will need the hybrid, and that it becomes important because the standard deviation is greater. Now, another part of that is if you're a 15 handicapper and you've got a 180-yard shot, chances are you're probably not going to hit the green. However, what's really more important from that distance is to be able to find a club or clubs that you can consistently advance the ball towards the hole, and hopefully not, leave yourself with a impeded shot. I generally believe that if you have the yardage gapping from the longer approaches better, you will be able to better advance the ball to the hole. But if you're the type of person that if you got a hybrid that you just hit really, really well, and you hit it about 170 yards on average, that may be the club you may want to hit on a 190-yard shot. You may not get to the green, but you can consistently advance at 170 yards. And maybe in place of maybe you can't hit a 190-yard hybrid shot to save your life, so you say, okay, I'll bag the 170-yard hybrid club and then carry the extra wedge to help me out with that. But in general, I would lean towards, for golfers, to go with the extra hybrid or long irons. And in fact, I would say probably the tour pros are the guys that could lean more towards bagging the extra wedge, because take somebody like Ricky Fowler. He's such a good danger zone player who struggles from short game play and from the birdie zone. He may be talented enough to play from the danger zone well if he takes one club out of his bag, and that may improve him enough around the green and with wedge shots if he's got the extra wedge in his bag. So the trade-off may be worth it. Also, the other big thing is that somebody like Ricky Fowler, they also have a smaller standard deviation on their tee shots than, say, the average amateur or even a really good amateur, meaning that, somebody like Ricky Fowler can probably play a course and have a really good idea of what he's going to have into each approach shot. So he's going to have, maybe the first hole on a course, he's almost always going to have a pitching wedge into the green. And so he can kind of more accurately project what he's going to need into each hole, so he can figure out if he's going to need, more accurately figure out if he's going to need, extra club in the danger zone or the extra clubs from the birdie zone with a short game. So I would, so that's the main concept of it. Again, variance and standard deviation generally rules the roost. You got to watch out for how many times you hit it, that shot on the course. Also, I would leave it I would generally, if I was a higher handicapper, I would generally favor the gap wedge over the 60-degree lob wedge. And the reason, again, is because of the standard deviation. I think the higher handicappers have a more difficult time hitting the ball as well as they do if they have to. Let's say they got a 90-degree shot and they could use their gap wedge. So they don't have a gap wedge in their bag. They may try to hit a pitching wedge. I don't know if they have the skills to hit that pitching wedge softer and to hit a reasonably decent shot, whereas around the green they may not need it as much, and maybe they have their 56-degree wedge on a bunker shot, and technically they could probably use a 60-degree, but they could still find the green with a 56-degree wedge. So again, if I'm a higher handicapper, I would probably favor a gap wedge versus the 60-degree. And also, I think for practice purposes, it's good to learn how to add loft to a 56-degree wedge in order to hit those flop shots and stuff like that, as I showed in that Sebi video there, where he's hitting flops with a 3-iron, and he got it when he would have a sand wedge or lob wedge in his hand. It was a piece of cake. So I would definitely favor the gap wedge versus the lob wedge for the higher handicappers, just because from a numbers perspective, but I also think it's more helpful for somebody to learn how to hit those shots. So if you have any other questions, just feel free to email me. I've got a couple of email addresses out there. I got richie3jack@yahoo.com. I'm also on Twitter at richie3jack, and I also have another email, which is at Pro Golf Synopsis @yahoo.com. Later up this week, I should have another column at golfwrx.com. It's nothing that's been in the Pro Golf Synopsis, so this should be new, and I think a lot of people will like it. Until then, I'll see you then.